Welcome back. I'm like thrilled, super excited. I was about to say thrilled because I just want to combine all of that. It's time for us to introduce you to one of my favorite people in Hollywood, in the world in general. It's Carla Renata. Let's go meet the Curvy Critic. Hey!
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Good, how are you? Tell
This is
me.
great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. It has been too long since we've been able to just sit and talk. And in some of the research, I know why it's been so long. You are very busy.
Yeah, I kind of am. I kind of am. I think the first time you contacted me, I was in the middle. I think I was in the middle of shooting Superstore when you contacted me, and my schedule for that was insane. I would have to be up at not be well. No, I had to be at work at was it 5 o'clock? No, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd have to be there. Sometimes my call time would be like 5:45, and I would not come home until 6 or 7 o'clock that evening.
Now,
And when
were you
go
there
ahead.
earlier because of the protocols with COVID? Like, were there additional things that had to be done production-wise because of that?
Yeah, so at NBC, you had to come in a couple of days before you had to shoot. You would come in and get a COVID test done, and then the day of shooting. So those days where I would have to be there at 5:45, I would have to come in and do a rapid test, and then they would have to get the results of the rapid test before they would continue with me going through hair and makeup and shooting and all that. And we would do that twice a day, and I would have my temperature taken twice a day. And on the days that I wasn't there, I would have to come in for a COVID test. So it was just like a never ending saga of swabs up my nose. I was like, can I just not have a swab up my nose today? But I would prefer that they do that. And because Superstore took place in a store, they were able to have sanitation stations everywhere because it would just look like it was part of the store.
Yep.
They had people cleaning our trailers. Nobody was in our trailers except for us. They had our clothes in a little muslin bag outside the trailer. Our shoes and anything else that we were wearing that was not considered clothing was in an enclosed plastic box. And we got box lunches, so there was no more, craft services. There was no more of that. There was no more snack trucks. None, all of that was gone. There was no more snacks at 11 a.m. All of that was gone. And it was stressful. I would be lying if I told you that it wasn't. It was very stressful because, the fear of coming to work every day, not knowing that somebody out of all these people that you're working with could possibly contract it and not know how they were contacting it or contracting it or being exposed to COVID. And I'm a caretaker for my mom. So it was particularly stressful for me because every day that I came home, I'd be like, I really hope that I'm not bringing anything in this house to her,
Sure.
Yeah. But in the end, it all worked out. Everybody was safe. We never had a single incident during the whole season. We never got shut down. Nobody ever got sick. And, it went off without a hitch. So
That's great.
yay.
And I know at one point you were the busiest recurring character in television, right?
Yeah.
You had 4 different shows that you were simultaneously a co-star on.
Recurring character on. I did that twice. That happened to me. I was a recurring character on 4 different episodic shows in one season twice. I know.
That's great.
It sounds insane as it's coming out of my mouth, but that did happen.
How did you balance all of that? Because not only are you doing that, you have a book that you've written, you have your critic, your reviews that you do, and
Yep, Curvy Critic.
and Curvy Critic started in a different name, and then you rebranded, which is part of what your book is all about.
I did. I couldn't quite decide on a name for the Curvy Critic. Like at first I was using my name and then I was using some other stuff. I cannot get comfortable. What is going on back here?
You
Okay.
take your time. We'll wait.
Um, and I'm really low, but that's okay. But
I love your whole aesthetic. The pink that you have going on, the fluffy pillows. Like, I feel very much like I just want to hop through this window and chill out on the couch behind you.
thank you. I do that quite often myself. But yeah, I was having a hard time infiltrating the world of film criticism with the name that I had. I was trying to use my name thinking that that would be easy because people were always able to remember my name. But when you put my name in the title of a podcast, it just doesn't quite work as the title of the podcast. So I think it was called Carla Renata's Corner, and that's just way too much in a mouth to say, and people are not going to remember that. And I literally, I literally was standing at a fitting for Superstore. Ironically enough, I was standing in the mirror, looking at myself in a black dress because I don't have full length mirrors in my house. I just have, like bathroom mirrors. That's it, or mirrors that cut you off, right below your belly button. I don't have any full length mirrors in my house.
And that's
So,
intentional, I'm guessing.
no, it's just when I
It's just how
bought
it
the
is.
house, that's the way the house came, and I just never upgraded it or did anything because I'm like, all I need to see in the mirror is my face. I don't need to see, like, if I can look down and see that everything's on straight and buttoned up and zipped up, I'm fine.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I looked at myself in this dress and I was like, wow, I look really curvy. And straight up, I was like, oh my goodness, I could be the curvy critic. And I went home and I looked it up to see if anybody else had trademarked it or, bought the domain, and nobody had. And so I hopped on it. And to this day, like, people know that when someone mentions the curvy critic, that they're specifically talking about me. So I was like, yay. I was
And
very excited about that.
You're, so for as busy as you were acting with Superstore during the pandemic, when I was trying to get you to come on and talk to us and learn more about what we were doing, you are as busy now with all of the awards season. I know that you've been promoting the Independent Spirit Awards, right? You're doing something with them, and you also hosted the Creative Art Awards.
I did. I did. I co-hosted the Creative Art Awards because a friend of mine, I think whoever they had to dip out at the last minute, and so my name came into play, and they asked me to do it. I'm like, of course, I love this section of the industry, so I was all about that. And I'm hosting the backstage virtual section of the Film Independent Spirit Awards on April 22nd with Angelique Jackson, who is Variety's media and film reporter. So I'm really excited about that because that's like a really big deal. And for me, it's a huge validation that people respect what I do and trust what I do, trust me with their brand. So I was like,
So I helped the producers for the Creative Art Awards get your co-host. And when they were talking about, you're right, somebody fell out, and they were like, well, here are the couple of names that we're talking about. I'm like, oh, well, I hope Carla's available because she's awesome.
aw, thank you, Jen.
Yeah, like, not taking any kind of credit, just your name was already floated out there, and all I did was like, hey, my vote
Like,
is
I know
there.
her. I love that you did that. Thank you so much.
Of course, and you did such a beautiful job. They also, I mean, the reason I was involved is they were donating some money to MPTF. So we played the trailer. There was a little bit of, verbiage that got spoken about how important the charity is, which was one of the reasons I wanted to not only give you this opportunity to let everybody learn about who you are and what you're doing, but also to talk about MPTF and what that has meant to you and the different touch points along your path that MPTF may have popped up.
Oh my goodness. MPTF saved my life here in LA because, as you know, being an actor, there are ebbs and flows and ups and downs, but there are more downs and more flows than there are the ebbs and the ups. So when I reached out and asked for assistance, I was given it without hesitation, and it was a lifeline for me, and it has been a lifeline for me and so many actors that have been in that situation. It's a very important organization that does wonderful work to keep the arts and the artists alive within the industry, and I wholeheartedly appreciate everything that the organization has done for me and what they continue to do for the rest of the artistic community, especially in the time that we're living in right now.
I honestly had no idea that you had reached out for assistance. I just meant like,
Oh yeah,
knowing
more
about.
than once.
That's awesome.
More than once. And I would tell, like, my friends would be in trouble and they would be crying and freaking out and talking about they were moving home. And I'm like, well, how much money do you need? Like, what's your situation? And I would just run down all of the organizations that I thought could help, you know, from y'all to a couple of other ones with a couple of other organizations. And just like me, my friends were saved by those lifelines as well. But you have to know about the lifeline in order for it to save you. So I make sure that people know what MPTF is, what they do, and how they can assist the organization beyond them just being a lifeline.
Yeah, we don't continue on without advocates like you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even begin to implore enough how helpful and how integral and how incredibly vital the organization is, especially for the senior members of our community. Because once you get a certain age in Hollywood, as we know, or as an actor, period, no matter where you live, they kind of throw you out to the pasture like an old horse. You know what I mean? And MPTF has been very instrumental in helping our senior members of the community stay vital and stay connected as well, which is important when you're older because you're already dealing with, you're in the third act of your life. You don't know when the Grim Reaper's coming, if he's coming, how he's coming, what's going to come with that. Is it going to be an ailment? Are you going to fall asleep? Are you going to break a hip? Like, you know, nobody knows what that's going to be. And a lot of people have the misunderstanding and make the mistake that when you're older, somehow you have lost your faculties. My mother is 82 years old and she is the sharpest person I know. So, you know what I mean? So it's just like people have to, I think the way that we treat our elderly in America, period, is despicable and it's embarrassing. And I think the mindset around that needs to shift and change. But MPTF is very, very, very integral and instrumental in helping that shift and that change occur.
It's part of the mission of what the television station is. I mean, this closed circuit TV station is a platform to keep that not only creative energy that people strive to make the center point of their career, but it's a passion that never goes away. So you want to have an audience and a place to continue to pursue that, even in retirement.
Exactly, because in the industry, you never really retire. Like, you know, if you are of a certain age, you're considered a character actor. Characters live forever. So you never in the show business, you never really retire. Like people say they retire, but they don't ever really retire. Let's be realistic about that. They never really retire. They may retire from the Sturm and Drang and the everyday what's the word I'm looking for? The everyday hustle and bustle of it. But as far as their creativity and that liveliness and that joy that they have, nobody ever retires from that. Now, look at Betty White. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look at if people have learned anything about growing older in the industry, if they look at people like Betty White, Cicely Tyson, and Quincy Jones, you can see that age is really, I mean, as corny as it sounds, age really is just a number. You're only as old as you let your mind think you are.
Right. a mutual friend of ours, Yvette Nicole Brown,
Yes.
had a very, very dear friend that lived out here that was a character actress up until her last days. Did you ever get to meet Connie Sawyer?
No.
So Connie was 105 and still
Wow.
like going out and booking gigs, and she was not ever going to stop doing what she was passionate about. And there are great pictures. I'll find pictures and send them to you of.
I love that. There was a woman on Superstore. I don't know how old Linda was. Linda Porter, I think it was her last name. I don't know how old Linda was, but Linda was on Superstore and she was in like she had stage 4 cancer and she was kicking it. She was on that set every day without fail, knew her lines, knew her blocking, and she was just great. And when, her time came to not be with us anymore, the show did a lovely job in honoring her time, which I thought was really, I'd never seen a show do anything like that for somebody that was a recurring day player. I never saw that. Like they did a whole episode dedicated specifically to her. And they simply named it Myrtle, which was her character's name. And but she was hilarious. She had been around. I don't even know how old. I don't think anybody really knew how old she was. But
Well,
but she.
that's the other thing about this industry, that there's there is a certain amount of like, don't tell anybody how old you are until you get to a certain age, and then it's like, tell everybody how old you are, because they're not gonna believe it. And
No.
there's a cachet to that, but there's this middle ground where you're like, none of your business how old I am. Here's what I can do.
She never ever said how old she was, but she was hilarious. She would walk around though. She would play that little old lady thing to the hilt sometimes. Like she would pull it out when she needed to, and then when she needed for you to respect her for being your elder, she would pull that voice out too. She was a trip, but she was really lovely, really really lovely to work with, and I enjoyed working with her. And I had the opportunity to work with Betty White one time, and what I noticed with Betty White is Betty White not only enjoys working, but she enjoys life in general. Like she has a vibrancy and a joy and a vivaciousness for life that is unparalleled by any human being I've ever met, including my mom. And she just takes every moment as it comes. And if that moment happens to be her last, she's good with it. But she is gonna go full throttle until it rolls around. And I wish that more people, when they were younger, live their life like that and don't wait until they get to, because not everybody lives to grow old.
Right.
We tend to forget that not everybody is fortunate, and people look at growing old as such a terrible thing. Growing old is a privilege. It means you have a life that's been well lived. It's a privilege. Not everybody lives to grow old, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks with these shootings and things. Not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to grow old. Some people don't even get to be 10 years old.
Right.
So for us to have this stigma in the entertainment industry about being old is a bad thing, being old is a privilege. It's an honor. And I wish that more people revered it in that way as opposed to looking at it as a detriment.
We're working to change that little by little.
Yay!
So let's shift a little bit and talk about your previous history before you became a critic, before you were an actor in television. You were singing, you were trotting the boards. Where did you grow up? How did you get into the theater? Because I also believe there's a pageant or two that we need to talk about.
Oh no, you're not trying out the pageants. Okay, so I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I was not born there, but I was raised there. And my mother and father are natives, born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. And my father was in the Marine Corps, and my mother was a registered nurse. And I wanted to be on Broadway more than anything because I would sit on Sundays with my mother and we would watch these old movies on television every Sunday, and they would show like, Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney movies. They show Charlie Chan movies. They show the Bowery Boys. They would show all kinds of like old classic, the kind of stuff that we watch on TCM now. They showed on the public station in St. Louis every Sunday, all day long. And Sunday was the only day off that my mother had. So my brother and I would grab a bowl of cereal, get in bed with my mom, and watch these movies, and especially the musical movies. And my mother would talk about these musicals, and she would talk about how she wanted to study dance with Catherine Dunham, but because of the religious constraints in our family unit, she was not allowed to pursue that dream. So when I got old enough to be able to do that, I loved to dance. I loved to dance. I loved to sing, and I didn't know I could act at the time, but I loved to sing and dance. And so my mother knew that there were shows at a theme park in St. Louis, Missouri called Six Flags. Well, not in St. Louis, but outside of St. Louis in Eureka, Missouri, called Six Flags Over Mid-America. And my mother took me out. I love this story. My mother took me out there in the dead of winter. They would always have auditions in January. My mother drove me out there in January to audition. And being the knucklehead that I was like, Mommy, could you not come in with me so that people won't think that my mom brought me here? My mother sat in the cold. It had to be like 20 below in Missouri during that time of the year. And makes me cry. My mother sat in the cold while I went in there all day long auditioning for these theme park shows. She never came in. She never embarrassed me. She just didn't. But she sat in that car. I'll never forget that my mother did that.
Wow.
And I would audition for these theme park shows, and then I got them eventually. And it gave me a taste of what being in a Broadway show was like, because back then they had live orchestras at the theme parks playing the music. It wasn't canned music. It wasn't on a click track. It was a live orchestra with a band leader. I mean, full 50-piece orchestra playing these shows. And I was like, what is happening? And I was like, oh, this must be what Broadway's like. So I did those. And then when I got ready to go to college, I went to Howard University, continued doing theme parks there. Doing theme parks there sent me to doing USO tours. So I traveled around the country doing USO tours. And yes, along the way, I did a pageant or two, because I realized very quickly that a lot of these pageants gave scholarship money for your education in school. So, and my mother was, her and my dad had split, and so she was trying to raise my brother and I on her own. And I thought maybe I could take some of the financial responsibility off of her if I went and did a pageant or something and got some scholarship money. So that's why I never ever did those pageants because I wanted to be Miss America. I never did those pageants because I thought I was going to sing on television. I literally only did the pageants so that I could get scholarship money to complete my education. And that's exactly what I did. So I took my scholarship money that I won running for Miss Maryland, the precursor to Miss America, and I took that money and I moved to New York. And then after I moved to New York, I would think I was there about 7 years before I got a break. And that break was the Who's Tommy. And then from the Who's Tommy, I just literally hopped. I know you love Tommy. And I said that I was going to do this because you asked me to. There's my
Yay!
Tommy poster.
I saw that show 4 times on Broadway.
I love that show. Let me tell you something. I was like, when I had seen the movie back, remember the movie back in the day with Tina Turner?
I hadn't seen the movie first. That's one of the reasons that I don't have that split.
Yeah. See, I saw the movie and Tina's from St. Louis. So I saw the movie and I was like, what? I'm like, oh, Tina's in there. I got to see it. And she was singing Acid Queen and being crazy and everything. I'm like, oh my God. So when I found out that they were doing Tommy as a musical, I'm like, I could be the Acid Queen. I can do the Acid Queen. I want to be the Acid Queen. So I went to see the show, but I had, back in the day in New York, if you had no money to see a show, you literally could do 2 things. You could get a standing room ticket for like $20 or something, or you could second act the show. You could come in. You could come in after intermission. Just kind of like walk in with the rest of the people after intermission. I would by no means encourage people. We can't do it now.
No.
But they after intermission when everybody starts coming in, you just kind of filter your way in and kind of just scan the room to see where there's an empty seat and go and sit down. The ushers never say anything to you because people did it all the time. But what I knew was I didn't want to see I needed to see the whole entire show. I wasn't going to second act it. I needed to see it. I bought my little $20 ticket and I was in the last row in the last seat of the St. James Theater watching Tommy. And I remember watching that show and thinking, I have to be in this. It was the most electrifying thing I'd ever seen. It was all this music and all this rock music from The Who and all these colors and these bright lights. And it was just, the way it was done was like, it was so balletic in the way it was staged and the way it was directed. And it was everything. And I'm like, I have to be in it. I couldn't get an audition for that show to save my life. Nobody would submit me for that show. Nobody. And the day of the open call, back in the day in New York, you could freelance with agents, and I freelanced with like 7 different agencies. And this one agent, I went over to her office to sign contracts for a commercial I had booked with Joan Rivers. And I'm signing the contract and she's like, what's wrong with you? And I was salty because I had to go to this open call. The open call was at Radio City Music Hall. The show was on Broadway. It had just won all these Tonys. So I knew the line was going to be ridiculous. And the odds of me actually getting into audition without the cutoff happening were going to be, slim to none. And I'm just like, I was mad about that. So I expressed my discontent to that agent. And she said, your other agents didn't submit you? I'm like, no, and you didn't either. Like, really? Is that what you're going to ask me right now? And so she picked up the phone. She called the casting director. And she asked the casting director, had they cast the Acid Queen? Because her ideology was, if they already know who they're going to cast, then why even go down there and go to the open call if they already know who it is or if it's already cast? And so she called to find out if they had cast it. Casting director said no. She said, can I send you Carla's information over there? She was like, yes, of course. And she said, messenger it over because we're going to have auditions on whatever day they were seeing the appointment auditions. And my agent hung up the phone. I was like, ooh, thank you. And she said, wait. She said, you still need to go to that open call, though. I'm like, ew, why? And she was like, I was not having it. And she said, because I'll never forget she said this, and I don't even remember her name, but I remember what she said to me. She said to me, you need to go to this open call because you need to remember as an actor, you always need to take control of your own situation. You cannot rely on me to messenger this picture over there. She said the picture could not get there. Something could happen with the messenger. It could get there and sit on a pile of envelopes with something else and they never see it and go, oops, we forgot to open this envelope with Carla's picture in it. This is your way of taking control of the situation. Wise. I was so salty that she told me that, but I took her advice and I went to that open call anyway, and I ended up booking Tommy. I wasn't the Acid Queen. I was the understudy for the Acid Queen, but I didn't care. I was in the show. I was in a Broadway show. I was in a Broadway show that was getting ready to do its first national tour. And anybody that knows anything about Broadway, that if you book a Broadway show first national tour back in the day, you worked with the same creative team that did the original Broadway show. So it's almost as good as being on Broadway because you're working with the same team of people.
Right.
That same creative team was tapped to do the revival of How to Succeed in Business with Matthew Broderick and Megan Mullally. And they took me out of Tommy and put me in How to Succeed. And I literally just hopped from show to show. I went from Broadway show to Broadway show to Broadway show for the longest time. And then a girl was in How to Succeed when I was there. She talked about coming to LA for pilot season. I didn't know what pilot season was. I didn't know what that meant. But from the way she was talking about it, I'm like, well, I need to experience that. And I came to LA and I've been here ever since.
And LA loves you.
Thank you.
It's true.
Thank you, Jen.
So we've talked a little bit about the history. We've talked a little bit about kind of present. We haven't talked about your book, and I want to know what's up next.
Okay, so my book is called The Actor's Guide to Self-Marketing, How to Promote and Brand Your Unique Image. And I wrote it because I used to be a publicist, and I would use the mindset that I had as a publicist to promote myself as an actor in the industry, doing mailings, trying to get meetings, that kind of thing. I did the exact same thing I would do for the clients that I represented as a publicist, and made it applicable to me as an actor. And people would always ask me, how did you do this? How did you do that? Folk were taking me to lunch. People were taking me for coffee dates. I'm like, there's only so many coffee dates and lunches and dinners I can go to. And it was time consuming. Like, it was 2 hours here, 3 hours there. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write a book. This way, I'm going to tell all my little stories in the book. And that way they could just read it and leave me alone. So I'm serious. So I wrote the book, and I was like, here you go. Don't ask me for another lunch, coffee, tea, nothing. Boom, here you go.
This successful book was born out of you being annoyed.
It really was, because it was born out of me being annoyed, and it was born out of the fact that I would notice throughout the industry that people coming out of college, or even people that were entering the entertainment industry from another lane, or entering it without any knowledge of what it was, they didn't understand that it's called show business with an emphasis on the word business.
Yeah.
You know, the performance part of it is such a small part of what we do. Is how you handle the business. If you don't handle your business, there will be no show. So I wrote the book for those two reasons. What's coming up next for me is, I have no idea. I know I'm hosting the Spirit Awards on the 22nd. I know that I do a lot of hosting and moderating Q&As for Film Independent, American Cinematheque. Sometimes I do it for Netflix and Lionsgate and a whole bunch of other people. I have my film critic show, The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata, that I do on YouTube every Sunday at 5 o'clock Pacific time. I write reviews. I do op-eds for Ebert.com. I do some articles in the artisan section at Variety. I do ghostwriting. I'm just literally trying to just enjoy my life one moment at a time. What I would like to see happen is, I would like to eventually, as an actress, instead of being that doll that's recurring on all the shows, I would love to be, like one of the lead people of a show for once, and have the show be successful. Because it's one thing to say you want to be the lead in the show, but you got to be specific. I learned from being on Broadway, you have to be specific about your dreams and your goals. If you're not specific, you literally will get what you ask for. And if you're not specific in what you ask for as it's tumbling out of your mouth, then you will get exactly what's tumbling out of your mouth. So I'm being specific and saying that that's what I want. And I want to be able to create a life for my family where they will never lack or want for anything ever again for the rest of their days. That's what I want for my future.
It seems like you are solidly on that path.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I also want to say, with your mom being at home, I want to send you all of the Zoom information for what we've been doing with the live broadcasts, because if she wants to hop on Zoom and work out with us in the chair workout class, or
that would be great.
Some of the interviews, yeah, we'd love to have her join us on Zoom.
That would be great. I think she might enjoy that, actually. She might actually enjoy that. I've been trying to get her to do stuff, and she, like, someday she'd be like, I want to do, and then we get up, I'm like, Mom, let's do it. She's like, I don't want to do that today. I'm like, let's do something, please. But she enjoys watching movies, so she's like my movie screening partner. I was, because everything went virtual, I was able to share my experience of doing the Sundance Film Festival with her, and the Toronto Film Festival, and all those film festivals I normally would be traveling to go to. Mm-hmm. I was able to share that experience with my mom at home, so that was kind of cool. What
are your picks for this year?
Coming up for this year, this Oscars year, or
this
the one that's coming
year.
up? This one. Well, it's proven that the odds of Nomadland not sweeping is going to be a big surprise if that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
In the categories that it has been continuing to sweep in, which would be Best Picture, Best Director, adapted screenplay. I think the Best Director might be a toss-up between her and Emerald Fennell, because they've been going neck and neck, with Chloe winning the majority of them. But the people that vote for the Academy is a completely different animal. It's a completely different group of people with a completely different set of criteria.
Yes,
so Emerald, you know what I mean?
The directors have chosen whoever the Directors Guild chooses as Best Director has won, except for like 8 times in the last 70 years.
Exactly.
And they chose Chloe.
Exactly. So, you know, I think the one category that's going to be a toss up are those best supporting categories, because those are always the surprises. I was just telling somebody not too long ago, people are like, oh, who's been winning best supporting? It's been Daniel Kaluuya, right? Which he really should have been best actor. I don't know what that's about, but that's a whole nother conversation. He's been winning best supporting everywhere. He's been sweeping the category. I think he may not have won maybe once. That happened the year that Sylvester Stallone was doing Creed. He won everything, and then the Oscars rolled around and they voted for Mark Rylance. I was in the Oscar press room that day when that happened, and to watch the press scramble because they thought they knew how the chips were going to fall, that was a mess. Or the time Marissa Tomei won over Vanessa Redgrave, right? Those categories, you never, when it's like this in a season where it's kind of all over the place with the actors, you don't know. Viola Davis may end up winning another Oscar. Like, we honestly, because she's been winning, and Andra Day has been winning. Carey Mulligan's won.
But I do
like everybody in the categories won except for Vanessa Kirby.
But I want to know your pick.
My opinion.
Right, your opinion.
Andra Day. I think Andra Day is going to win.
She was
because she just kills it.
Yeah.
And up until I saw Andra Day, I was totally going with Carey Mulligan. But after I saw Andra Day, I'm like, okay, Andra Day's got this. Chadwick Boseman's going to win Best Actor. Daniel Kaluuya is probably more than likely going to win Best Supporting. Chloe, like I said, is going to get her, or Emerald Fennell will get Best Director. Best Picture is probably going to be Nomadland. I'm hoping that it would go to, like, you know, Promising Young Woman, or I was really hoping against hope that One Night in Miami was going to do better this award season, but that hasn't turned out to be the case. I'm hoping that her will win for her score for Judas and the Black Messiah, and or I can't remember the young lady's name who did the one for One Night in A Trial of the Chicago 7, and or Leslie Odom for One Night in Miami. Those 3 people, because those songs, all 3 of those songs. But then again, if Andra Day doesn't walk away with Best Actress, she may walk away with Best Original Song, Tigress and Tweed for The United States versus Billie Holiday. That's Best Actor. Yeah, I think that's how it's gonna go down.
Okay, you heard it here first from the Curvy Critic. Carla, thank you so much. I'm gonna send you more information because I would also love to invite you on our panel show Cinephiles, where all we do is talk about movies.
Oh yeah, I would love to do that.
Okay.
Yay!
Done. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.